Hi, everybody. Welcome to my channel. I'm Paige Elizabeth, and I have been in the wellness space legitimately my entire life. If you don't know much about me, um, I practiced Ashtanga yoga for 22 years. I taught Ashtanga yoga for 10 years. I am a mindset coach. I'm an author, speaker. I got into the wellness space at age 4 when I lost all my hair. So it's been quite the journey. I feel like there's really nothing out there in the alternative realm that I haven't studied or been made aware of as a technique or a tool, right? But what I wanted to do with this particular video is because I get a lot of questions and it's just about nervous system, burnout, reset. I'll make these TikToks and people are like, well, how do I reset? And the thing is, it's not just like a straight line to healing your nervous system. So I want to break down all of it from like start to finish, the story of like how did we get here and what is required to actually heal and move forward as a woman, especially over 35 or 40, and still continue to live your best life. Okay. So first of all, and I made like a bunch of notes because I really want to make sure I cover everything for you. So when we're dealing with the nervous system, we are dealing with the autonomic nervous system. So we're dealing with parasympathetic and sympathetic, okay? We are not talking about the central nervous system today. And the nervous system essentially is like the boss that gives the commands to the adrenals. And when people get burnt out, they end up in phase 1 or phase 2 of adrenal burnout. Phase 1 is tired but wired, and phase 2 is just flatlined, right? So tired and wired is synonymous with anxiety, insecurity, hypervigilance. What's next? A shoe's about to drop. I have to have everything covered. Like you're constantly in like marathon mode. Whereas like phase 2, nervous system burnout is where you're just done. You're tired all day. You can sleep 12 hours a night. You're very apathetic. This is instead of um, fight or flight, we're now freeze fawn. So this is characterized by more depression, apathy, indifference, just kind of feeling numbed out and just like barely coping now. Like all the things that used to bring you fun and joy and excitement kind of just don't. And it's not that you only ever experience these things over the age of 35, but life does catch up and most of us do. My first time burning out was in 2012 when my little brother died. I had just come back from India, sick with liver flukes, and my system collapsed. So that was my first experience with burnout. Fast forward 10 years to 2022, I got to relive it. Um, so where does it all begin, right? Around 28 is when, if we've just been going about our lives, not really conscious of what we're eating and what we're doing, just partying, working, living our best life, 28 is about the age where the immune system stops modulating properly. And what does that mean? So the immune system is basically this filter that it attacks things that aren't good for our bodies, right? So if we catch a cold, it's like, oh, got to get rid of that. Got to put that into check so it doesn't take over the system. But see, this filter isn't as clean. It starts to get clogged and it doesn't modulate. And so then the immune system is like attacking everything. So now we have allergies we didn't have before. We have histamine reactions we didn't have before. We have pain in our body we didn't have before. And we feel that hangover that we didn't feel before, right? Because the immune system is like, I don't know what's a threat. So let me just attack everything, including your body's proteins, right? So it starts to go after everything. This starts to really kick in at 28. And if without intervention, you kind of stay in this like low grade chronic inflammation that just slowly gets worse with age. So that happens, around 28. We head into our 30s. And then as women, now this does happen to men too, and this is why I get really annoyed when everything gets scapegoated or thrown under the perimenopause rug, because this isn't just a female exclusive issue. This is a male issue as well. They just don't have a fancy word called perimenopause to throw it under, right? But basically around 35, stress really starts to kick up, right? Now our life filter has gotten clogged. because we're getting older, we're managing more. And if we didn't unpack something in real time, we carry it. That's what baggage is, right? It's stuff that we don't confront and unpack in real time. So it just gets carried with us. And so now we're carrying all this load and we've had more experiences to compound, and now we're more cynical and we don't just brush things off, right? So now our stress starts to creep up. And if we don't modulate this lovely, you know, hormone called cortisol just kicks up and boom. Now, cortisol gets a bad name, but the thing is, cortisol is actually typically anti-inflammatory until there's too much. And now it's chronic inflammation, right? So cortisol and inflammation have a relationship. So now we've got cortisol feeding into the inflammation that's already been brewing and inflammation feeding into that cortisol. So this lovely loop that's happening on the physical or physiological level. All right. And now we find that we've been hit over and over again by life. We've had a lot of that experience. So now we're more reactive, we're more exhausted, we're more, oh my gosh, again, right? We've just had a lot of shit come our way. And so basically then the mind just is like, oh, one more thing. And then now we live in this cortisol loop where it's like everything is just a problem, a threat, a reason to get defensive, and we tend to just live, whether we realize it or not, like even if we're consciously like a nice person, on some level we're like, again, oh my gosh, here we go. Like there's these reactions that are happening internally, and that's compounding and it's keeping cortisol from going back down. So now cortisol is up, inflammation is rising. And as we get older, our hormones, even if we're really in good health, they still naturally kind of wane a little bit. So even the healthiest person is still going to have this kind of waning of their hormones, male or female. It's not just women. Men end up with low T, right? That's what they call it. Women have perimenopause. So, but again, this is not something that's exclusive to women. And that's why I really don't like it when I hear these narratives of like, oh, you're just in perimenopause. Probably not. Okay. So now we have this sympathetic dominance happening in the system. Okay. So the nervous system sends this signal out constantly of threats, annoyance, irritation, problems. And then the adrenal goes, okay, more cortisol, more cortisol, more cortisol, right? So now we have this high red flag of life called cortisol. Now the body can kind of go wane a little bit with that, up and back, but the truth is if it's there too far too long, then eventually what happens is we end up in the second phase where cortisol just says I'm done, right? And now we have low cortisol, and regardless of where you're at, so that's when you end up in that like, I'm over it, I don't care anymore, not interested in life, just want to go lay on a beach somewhere. Like that's where you just kind of flatline a little bit. And the thing is, in this process, we end up with what's called HPA dysfunction. And this is hypothalamus pituitary adrenal. And the signals just get so dysfunctional. And now it's not, even when it's low cortisol, it doesn't matter because the HPA dysfunction is already set in. So the signaling is off. In this process, another lovely thing happens, which has been now defined recently, is called pregnenolone stealing. So pregnenolone is the master hormone. Pregnenolone is essentially the pool that all the other hormones convert from to get their needs met. Cortisol, aldosterone, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. And if cortisol is running too high and you end up with HPA dysfunction, now your sex hormones are taking a hit. For women, it's progesterone first, typically because that's the one that's right next to cortisol. So it just starts siphoning from there. And that's why women end up with legitimate perimenopause symptoms, because the hormone that was supposed to be used for something else is now being stolen for survival. And the body will always, 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 always prioritize survival. The first system to go is always reproduction, right? And I have known women who went into full-blown menopause at 40 because they were alcoholics. They were so toxic that in order for their body to keep up and keep them in survival mode, they had to sacrifice something. And so when we think about, you know, reproduction, or when we think about our health, right? If reproduction is going, that's a signal that the body is stressed somewhere and it needs recalibrating, right? That's a symptom that needs to be addressed, not necessarily a like, oh, we're just getting older, right? And you can get older, first of all, you can go through perimenopause and menopause without these horrific symptoms. If you have these symptoms, that's in and of itself not a sign of, oh, you're going through menopause. It gets exasperated when you go through menopause because these conditions were already on the table, right? And women do kind of feel it a little bit harder and a little bit sooner than men because men do have testosterone as a backup. We don't, right? So, like, our energy is adrenal. And so if our adrenal is taxed, that's it, right? Men can go a little bit further, a little bit longer because of the testosterone, but eventually if their testosterone is being siphoned and they are not recalibrating, then eventually they'll have low T and they'll have, similar issues as they also are in burnout, right? And so what are these symptoms typically end up looking like, right? We have the anxiety, the depression, weight stalling or weight gaining, can't build muscle, blood sugar issues, sleep disruption, no energy, tired but wired, digestive issues, and body pains. And then, of course, for women, a lot of times you can end up with like night sweats or something. Again, if your progesterone is getting siphoned or your estrogen, right? Now the thermal regulation is off because the HPA is off. Like it's a whole cascade of events, right? But again, you don't have to. Like I know women who are in their 60s and 70s who went all the way through menopause and didn't have symptoms, right? So when we just go, oh, that's what it is. No, 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 no. Trust me, your nervous system is the issue, not the fact that you're getting older and transitioning. And we need to be more honest and more communicative about this because this can be corrected. Eventually, we're all going to end up in menopause. Like that's, just like we all go through puberty. But how we transition is 100% dependent upon our habits and our healing, right? So, sympathetic dominance, or sorry, sympathetic nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system. When the nervous system signals those, red flags, we end up in sympathetic dominance if we're there too much, too long. And then we want to get into parasympathetic flow, rest, digest, right? We don't really want to be in this like flee or fight mode, right? And so we want to recalibrate. Now, the other thing that is really critical to understand is there are, I call them like 4 pillars that I have found. Like there's 4 parts to recalibrating and healing that nervous system so that way moving forward you can have the body you want, you can lose weight or put on muscle or whatever your goal is, heal the blood sugar issues, all of that good stuff. So there's basically the 4 pillars that I personally have found that are essential, right? Because people will say, well, like, what can I do? And it's like, again, it's not just one thing. So first and foremost, we have to focus on the body physically or physiologically. Okay, so this means addressing diet, nutrition, neurotransmitters, gut, right? So we have to make sure that we are healing the actual physical body so that physiologically things can actually calibrate better, right? And so I put women through like a whole foods diet. Like it's really important to get clean whole foods into the system, lower the inflammation so cortisol can kind of naturally lower. And then when we are excessively stressed, we don't absorb all vitamins and minerals. Like hair loss is not just a thing that happens. It's because you're not processing or assimilating your vitamins and minerals, and therefore your body is suffering as a result, right? So it's really important to eat certain foods that aren't going to compete with the nutrition, right? Because sometimes the food that we eat actually likes to take our nutrition from us instead of giving it to us. So we eat proper foods, and we make sure that we are getting the right nutritional ingredients to refeed the system, right? I mean, and it's trace minerals, it's vitamin A, B, C, D, K, like it's all of it, right? Like I don't believe in medicine. I think it's got its place. If we get all the way to the end of the road and you still need help, okay, right? I'm not putting down GLP-1s, I'm not putting down peptides or anything, but like if you can totally recalibrate 90% on your own, why wouldn't you want to, right? Because otherwise you're creating a crutch and you're not getting your needs met anyway. Like you might be able to get on the GLP-1 and lose the weight, but then your hair is coming out because you're not actually getting the nutrition, right? So it's important to make sure that the body's actually getting its needs met. Because when the body gets its needs met, it gives back to you, right? You have great skin, you have great hair, you have great energy, you sleep. So it's really important. The other part of it is that, and this has been pretty consistent with a lot of women, is if they've had cortisol running too high too long, they usually have to do a little bit of a liver detox, right? Because cortisol can get backed up in the liver. It can affect how you metabolize your other hormones. And especially if you're waking up between 1 and 3 a.m., I guarantee you have a liver issue, right? So we have to help clean up the liver. So we recalibrate the body. There's more, but we'll just leave it there. We recalibrate the body, okay? The next part is going to be the mental emotional or the habits and beliefs, right? So we didn't just get here randomly. We got here because of a set of habits and beliefs that contributed to our system feeling betrayed over and over and over again, right? Like maybe you're that woman that's like, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. Every time you say I'm fine and you lie, your body's like, excuse me, we are not fine, right? So that would be a habit. It's not serving you. A belief might be, I have to get it done or it won't get done, right? Like that's a habit, or sorry, a belief that I hear a lot from women. Like if I don't do it, it won't get done. Maybe, or maybe your children will finally figure out where the refrigerator is if you go long enough, right? So, we have to get those habits. My keynote speech is called When Women Speak, They Heal. And I don't mean speak on a stage. I mean when you use your voice. 80% of the spectrum I have found runs very codependent, specifically women, because they don't believe that they have the right to take up space, the right to use their voice. They believe that sacrifice is a duty. And what's interesting is that on a spiritual level, right? Like I came from the yoga community. If you were to step into your power spiritually as a woman, it's quite the opposite. It's all about being in your personal space and your authority and your sovereignty and actually using that voice. That's what it means to actually heal your feminine side. So, using that voice, changing those habits, relating to yourself differently, that's a huge part of like recalibrating the system so you don't end up back here in a year, right? So we have to heal the mind and teach you how to be that formidable, amazing, lovely, worthy woman that you truly are. And that's probably the stickiest part that I come across when I deal with people, because they'll defend their beliefs, the same belief that got them here, that's giving them health and hormonal issues. They'll defend it, right? And I get it, right? The nervous system is going to protect itself. Anything that we have built, we try to protect, either consciously or unconsciously, whether it's serving us or not. But I've seen too many women end up with degenerative diseases, cancers, and autoimmune issues as a result of the self-sacrifice, right? And so you have to ask yourself, I'm only midway to dead, right? Like, what do I want the next era of my life to look like? Right? So this is where I get really excited, because I love to empower women and really help them step into their voices. Like it really excites me to see that transformation. But that would be the second aspect of what needs to happen in order to recalibrate the nervous system permanently. Okay. The third aspect is, I call it the spiritual aspect. Really, it's just cultivating that boundary and that relationship to yourself. So if you're never making time to fill your own cup, right? Part of what women struggle with is that depending on where you're at on that spectrum of service, codependency, people pleasing, a lot of women don't even have their own identity or not a very strong one because they've been conditioned to just lean into whatever's in front of them, right? And so they've never really taken the time to go, who am I? What do I want? What do I like? What do I need? And then this is where you get to develop that relationship to you. You get to practice things like reparenting and self-love and actually saying no to others so you can say yes to yourself, right? Really critical. You don't have to be religious or spiritual to develop a relationship to yourself, but it is critical to your well-being long term. Okay. And then lastly, the last component that I find is not always applicable, but is applicable about 90% of the time is the trauma part, right? So there's big T trauma and little t trauma. We have big T, which is like, I was assaulted in 2019. That's big T. And then there's little t, which is the daily grind of things that are just not going our way, right? And so there's the two degrees of how we integrate. And again, trauma is not necessarily defined as what happens to us. It has more to do with how we relate to what happens to us. And so if we go through something that, for example, I use this a lot. So like I put myself out there a lot. I get a lot of nasty comments on social media. You know, for someone who hasn't stepped into her sovereign power, that would crush her, right? Because she's completely outsourced her validation to whoever will take it. But for me, I'm like, oh, okay, you don't like me. I triggered something in you. Like I reframe it instantly and keep moving. And so trauma a lot of the times really is more based on like how we perceived what happened to us, not just the actual event itself. The trauma that is unresolved, that unpacking I mentioned, is stuff that gets stuck on the vagus nerve level, right? So it's unconscious, right? Something that happened 5 years ago, we're still carrying it around like a resentment or something that caused bitterness or left us feeling unsafe. Like these are the things that stay like a record skipping underneath the surface, draining the battery that is our life force, right? And so this will also feed into that cortisol loop of safety or threat. And so we do look at trauma when we're going through our habits and we're going through our beliefs. We revisit, you know, if somebody died and how that was processed. We revisit the divorce you went through, the miscarriage you had, or maybe you were treated improperly in the workspace. Like it could be anything, right? We're looking at, was it processed? Was it healed? Or is it still stuck, playing a role on the subconscious level, eating away your life force? So that is the fourth component that we deal with. Because again, if we don't treat all of them, you can get pulled back into nervous system dysfunction. Mostly though, it is my intent when I'm working with someone as an educator first and foremost to give you the tools and information, right? Like it's up to you if you want to do the work, but it's there. And once you have that information, you can always refer back to it. This way you never feel like you have to start over necessarily. You can just be like, oh, let me pull out that thing I was told about. Let me try that technique. I kind of went through this thing and I want to make sure it doesn't cause long-term trauma. Or, you know what, it's been a year, maybe I should do a liver detox or a little bit of a reset and clean up my diet so that I'm good moving forward, right? So like the program that I do is just a few months, but like the tools are yours for life. This way, whether you are legitimately in perimenopause or you've gone through menopause or you're 15 years ahead and you're nowhere near it, you have the tools, right? And you don't have to be a statistic as you get older to these symptoms, right? Because from all the research that I'm doing right now, and I find it really sad, you know, it's like all of a sudden, perimenopause has turned into this 15-year era. I mean, I was taught it was a season where your cycles become irregular. Like that was the biggest indicator that you were shutting down factory, was that your cycles were becoming irregular. And I don't mean 25 to 28 day cycles. And I'm talking like 23 days to 60 days to 25 days to 90 days. Like that's what I'm talking about. When the cycles become irregular, then you know, okay, I'm getting ready to transition, right? But even that's like starting your period and it becoming regular, right? Like it's not something that has to come with all of these crazy symptoms. And especially, like doesn't have to come with blood sugar issues and insulin resistance and weight gain and depression and anxiety. Like these are all things of just a need to recalibrate so that your body can give you what you need. So I hope that clarifies, the long and the short of like nervous system dysfunction and how to heal it. Again, my name is Paige Elizabeth. This is what I do. I help women live their best lives. I'm 43. I have more energy and a better body now than I did at 25. So if you want to sleep like a teenager again and go all day with energy and be unmoved by people, I can teach you how to do that. Just hit me up. You can email me, you can message me. I would love to talk to you. Have a good one.